Well, good morning. It's all of a bit of a fluffity-do this morning because when you're not sure where your next pillow is coming from, and when you're not sure where you're going to be, and when you're not sure if your little tummy will be fed, you get into a right dither. So, a right dither it is this morning. So let's hand over to Eddie. She'll calm things down.
Hello and welcome to Mirador Television. We are the biggest little TV in the world, based in Lewes, East Sussex in England. Our aim is to entertain and to spice things up a little. We will also keep an eye on the local politics, because let's face it, someone has to. Our programs range from stories about the local people to stories about people from all the way across the pond. Brought to you by our wonderful colleagues in New York. So why not sit back, relax with your favourite cuppa, or maybe your favourite tipple, and enjoy. This is Mirador Television.
It's all not going to work this morning. Oh dear, 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 dear me. Come on. Well, it is 35 minutes past 7 between the apologies and the kerfuffle and the intros. We spent 5 minutes this morning before we even utter a word. But nonetheless, those people who are now familiar with us, I hope that you'll forgive me for trying hard to let others who are tuned in. And it's interesting because we get little notifications from various social media when people are added to our audience, and it's slowly growing. It's growing very nicely. So I do like people to know who we are and what we're all about. And that little collage of stuff about Lewes, I think, probably tells a story. Doesn't tell the story about Mirador, but that's another story which we can saunter through a little later this morning. But first of all, let's look at the news headlines. And I suppose the, the ongoing story and the worry we always have of police being armed beyond their capacity to handle situations is another story out of the United States, where a 13-year-old boy has been shot dead by a policeman in an alley after a chase, and the video suggests that he put his hands up to surrender and didn't have any weapon at all, even though the police report said that he did. Now, I think before we leap to judgment is remember that this is in the depths of the night. I sometimes watch a movie, particularly a Western, and off the bad guy goes in gallops out of town, and the sheriff goes with him, and it's the middle of the night. Well, even in the town, of course, in the mid 1800s, there wasn't much light. And certainly once at night time you got out into the countryside, absolutely no light at all, unless you got a silvery moon. And of course, it's very difficult to see. And I know that sometimes my own experiences I bring in, and you must think, God, is the guy not? Is there something he hasn't done? Oh, yeah, thousands of things. But what I have done has been quite a lot. And I spent a summer at university being a guard, a prison guard, in a juvenile detention centre. And I can remember one night that the police, and this is in the middle of the night, about 2 o'clock in the morning, the police brought in a batch of youngsters, mostly for their own protection, in as much as they were vulnerable. But one girl, she saw a moment when nobody was watching her, and away she went. And I took off after her. And she went down sort of some back alleys until, in the end, I couldn't see a thing. It's 2 o'clock in the morning. The street lighting didn't reach into some of these nooks and crannies. Where she was, I had no idea, and I couldn't see a hand in front of me. We picked her up the next day. There was no way I was going to find her. In fact, I tripped over a couple of things and buggered my hand. But so I think that we have to accept that the police sometimes, in given circumstances, find themselves in situations of, am I going to be the one that's going to end his life, or is somebody else? But by the same token, the number of people now who have been killed, put it bluntly, killed by the authorities, and never mind about the shooting of the bad guys with the bad guys, or the bad guys on the good guys, is. But in the United States, the shooting has got beyond what is reasonable. And one of the things that I'm always thumping on about is training. Train people, train people, train people, train people. And if the coppers are going to keep their guns the way that they are at the moment, and I find it difficult to argue against that. You know, as a journalist, you walk on the dark side. You go to a lot of places that other people never go. I mean, I've been on patrol with the army in the Falls in Northern Ireland. I don't suspect that many people have done that. So you get a feel for what it's like. You talk to the squaddies. You see the situation, the conditions. When we sit in judgment of some people and say they shouldn't have done this and they shouldn't have done that, I think that what we really need to do is to say, do you understand those people who are going about to make a judgment? Do you understand the conditions under which people operate, particularly our security forces? So anyway, there's a certain sympathy